Hello and welcome. I'm Bev from Living Fabulously, and today my guest is Claire Ashman. Very unusual guest for me, but a really powerful conversation we're going to have. Welcome to you, Claire.
Thank you very much for having me, Bev.
So, Claire, I'd love to know what it is that you do, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I am a cult survivor of not one but two cults. So I was brought up in a very strict religious Catholic sect that has since become an open cult around the world. So that began when I was about four and a half, and that being in such a controlled, manipulated environment where I was homeschooled and I was without TV, newspapers, magazines, didn't have any friends outside of the sect. We would only see these people once a week when we went to church. All of that set me up for the choices that I made, very naive ones, I have to say, when I was 18. When I married I was married at 18 and a half, and I married a man who was about 12 years older than me, who was in this part of the same sect. And not long, I'd birthed 5 children, and then he said to me that he wanted to move from Melbourne and he wanted to move to a supposed loving community. And I didn't want to go. I didn't know anything. Like, I just felt something felt not right, and I didn't want to go. But he literally sold the house from underneath us, and then I spent almost a decade in what turned out to be one of Australia's largest doomsday cults. So that was my life. I left there 11 and a half years ago, and with my 8 children in tow, and I began my life again. I got divorced, and then I was a solo mother for 8 years, and then I've since remarried and living in a different state, and I've done a complete 180 with my life.
That's beautiful.
So that's where I'm at now.
Yeah. So, this journey is just unique from anybody that I've ever met. So I know that we've got lots to talk about today. So let's talk about that journey for yourself, that internal journey that you went through to get to where you are today. Because, you're giving me the facts and the headlines of it, but what was it like for you?
Well, the thing is, something that I came to the realisation only a few months ago, and this came about because my dad had a stroke, is that I'm the eldest of 9 children, and I am the only one that remembers what life was like before Mum went really religious. And I remember I was happy, adventurous, curious, chatty. I was normal, as in just wearing normal clothes, being a normal kid, everything like that. But then it completely changed when I was about 4 and a half, when Mum went really religious, and suddenly everything was a sin. Everything was strictly controlled. We had so much prayer. We didn't have outside friends. And quite frankly, like when you have that daily indoctrination and manipulation and the guilt coming, at you all the time, you think you become to see that's normal. And you've got to remember, it started when I was 4 and a half. So I didn't know any different. When I went to get married at 18 and a half, I knew I wanted a different marriage to my parents, but I had nothing tangible. I had no life experience with which to be able to set that up. So it was a very big disappointment. And then I knew when he wanted to move to the cult, like I really, really felt internally that something was very, very wrong, and I was very upset, and I didn't want to go. But I didn't want to be a single mum. I had no money, I had no job, and I knew I wouldn't have any family support if I did leave my husband. So I was forced to go. And I didn't think I had a choice. Like knowing what I know now, I did have a choice, but I didn't know I had a choice. So I was forced to go. And then I thought, okay, if I just give up what I want for a few years, he'll begin to see that this is ridiculous, and then we can leave, and we can So I had this doormat, self-sacrificing attitude at the time, but I was brought up like that. I was brought up that the man was the head of the house and he controlled the finances, and you do what your husband says. But the longer we lived in that cult, and the more restrictions that we had on us, I didn't want to do that anymore. It wasn't me. And I struggled a lot internally, and, I did a lot of crying. I did a lot, to myself. And I found it really, really hard. And I didn't realize until much later that I suffered from anxiety. I went numb, but this was all of a result of how I lived. But then it just got too much. There was an incident where I knew for sure that my husband didn't love me. He didn't love the kids. He wasn't treating us right. Marriage was abusive in several ways. And then I just thought, I have no idea what life is like on the outside, but it has to be better than this. It has to be better than what I'm enduring now. So, and I want a better life. I have no idea how I'm going to go about that, how I'm going to build it. I have no idea. But there's the kids and me. And if we've got the kids and me, we'll be right. And that's what, and so I just did that. We got evicted from the cult, and like when the sheriff showed up to my doorstep with the papers in his hand, like I didn't even know what they meant. They were repossession papers, but I didn't know what it all meant. I just said to him, look, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it. I'm not going to give you any trouble. Just tell me what I need to do. And he was so helpful and so lovely. And so I just went and I found myself a home, a house to rent. And I mean, luckily I had the help of someone else to do that, but because I had no idea how to even apply for a rental on my own. I didn't. I just had no idea. And can you believe it? Like, I mean, I was on welfare payments, for God's sake. I had 8 children and I got the house. Can you believe it? Like, I got it. Like, I shouldn't have got it. I really shouldn't have got it, but I did. And it was the best thing ever. And then, of course, then I was kind of like wading through the world in a way, because I had no idea. Because, I mean, the kids and I were playing catch up on TV shows and movies and music and fashion and everything. Like, the kids were going to a normal school. So, there was a lot going on, plus then I was still going to church, but then questioning it. There was so much going on there. And I look back now and I wonder how I even managed it all. But I did.
And that's what I'm interested in. I'm really interested. You integrated back into a society you had no understanding of. So what do you think are some of the things that made you resilient?
My absolute Irish determination. I mean, I don't come from Ireland. I was born here, but my father did instill in us our strong Irish heritage, even though it's several descendants down. And I think that strong Irish determination, that one way or another, something, you can create a better life. And I mean, Dad used to always teach us that there's more than one way to skin a cat. And I say, I've skunned a lot of cats. And I have. And it's just like, if someone said no to me, I'll just, I might smile sweetly and go, but on the inside, I'm going, sure, you just watch me. You've just said no, now I'm going to find another way. So I would find another way, because I was my kids' security and stability, and they were looking to me to make a life better for them. So I had to do that. So come hell or high water, it was going to happen one way or another. And if I tried one way and it failed, that's okay. There's 99 other ways to do it. That's the way I saw it. So, and I mean, the kids helped me as well. Like, I mean, they were going to school, they were using computers and using mobile phone. Like, I had a phone, first kind of mobile phone. So I got the kids to help me because they were tech savvy. So I got them to help me. And so I just waded through it bit by bit. I mean, I'm still technically challenged. I still ask my kids for help now. So nothing's changed there, really.
Yeah. And so, you're very determined, and, yet you obviously have those moments where you think, like, what have I done? So what was going on for you internally, and how did you make sense of that?
Do you mean like coming out to live in the world, or?
Yes, so like you've lived under all these constraints, not thinking for yourself, not making decisions for yourself, not having the freedom to choose. So how did you start to make sense of this? Now you've got all this freedom and, those sort of things. How
Well,
did you make sense of all of that?
Well, you've also got to remember that I was free, in inverted commas, with 8 children in tow. So you're not very free. So I still had to be somewhat of a responsible adult. Um, I mean, I would literally just go day by day and scenario by scenario, I suppose. So, like, when it came to like the children's parent-teacher interviews, I didn't know what to expect. So I thought, okay, they've sent me this email and I've got to sign up for the parent-teacher interviews. Let's go. So I went, and then I found that, they were very personable and very helpful, and they would explain things. So I thought, phew, we got through that all right. And then I also spent a lot of time, like when I met people, I would also listen to people, like when they talked, and watch how they act and how they would react to things. So then I would learn the no-nos of certain things. You don't talk about religion, politics, or how much people earn. That's a big thing. Although yes. I still love asking those questions. Like, I love asking them because it's amazing how volatile people get so quickly, yet I'm just asking out of curiosity. I don't care either way, whether you're religious or not. I'm just asking a question. And then, or politics, same thing, and they all fire up, and I'm like, calm down, it's all right, it's not the end of the world. But there was just those instances, like, look, there were times when I didn't have a clue what the hell I was doing, and there was a few times where I would literally go into my cupboard and cry because it was overwhelming and it was difficult, and I didn't know whether I was doing the right thing. But it was almost like, I'd go in, I'd have a cry, and then it'd be like, brush the tears away, and it's like, okay, right, what's the options here? What are the options? And that's how I would just wade through it. I mean, there were a few times when I had problems paying bills, as I mentioned in my TEDx Ipswich talk, I think. And I thought, well, there has to be a way around it. Surely they take payment plan. And I would just ring up and just say, hey, I'm a bit on struggle street right now. Can we do this in installments? And they're like, yeah, if you set up direct debit, it shows that you're paying it, you'll be fine. Like, sweet, we'll go for that one. So it was just a learning curve of doing all this. And then when it came to meeting people, I would just literally say yes. Like, believe me, I had very little confidence, very little self-esteem, but I couldn't be on my own. I'm a people person. And even though I felt so shy and I felt so naive and I knew I wasn't up to speed with world events and everything else, and I just thought, well, I'll just give it a go. And so I went through a stage where I said yes to every single flipping invitation just because I wanted to get out there and meet people. And I went with the attitude of, I've said yes, and I'll just go there to see what it's like. If it's not for me and the people are just sort of a bit weird, or, we don't click or whatever, well, then, nothing's lost. It was just a learning experience. Yeah. And that's what I did.
Yeah, so it's that whole attitude of, this is an experiment, really, because you didn't have any any conditioning around what society was like. So, being able to be free and open. So now, how do you go about living a full life? Because you've talked about how, integrating back, you had this resilience and you've made sense of a new world. And so how do you live a full life now?
Because I feel like I've missed out on so much, I attack everything with gusto and enthusiasm. I have to say that. For instance, I took up CrossFit at the age of 41. Now, bear in mind, I had no sporting background. I'd never played in a team, and I didn't know the rules to games and stuff like that. I didn't know, but I just thought, what the hell? How, if I'm standing on the sidelines, what's the point? And so I just threw myself in there with gusto, and that's something that I really, really loved, and I still love now. So for me, I just throw myself into things and just absorb it. And I ask a lot of questions too, like, not everything is for me. Like, for instance, I mentioned before about religion. Like, I am curious about why people, the biggest thing for me, I am curious about what people believe and how they came to that belief. Like, I'm not judging you for it. I just want to know, because the brain just amazes me with how people they can think so strongly about something, and it's just like, why? Why? What brought you to that? What happened in your past to bring you to that? Like, so I ask lots of questions, and I find the brain fascinating. I find life fascinating. And, I live with enthusiasm and gusto, because I feel like I've missed out. I didn't live life for so many years, and now it's like, holy crap. I don't want to be getting old and go to my grave thinking, I didn't do this, this, and this, and this. I've got an ever-running bucket list that I have to, I have to tick off. I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do that. I just have to.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the other thing that you're referencing there is that you've now got this freedom of choice around that. So you're not wasting any opportunities. You're not staying stuck in something that doesn't work. And what I find really curious, Claire, is that you seem so strong-willed and strong-minded. And I almost wonder how you actually were in a situation like that. And I know that I listened to one of your interviews where you talked about it's all you knew. So there was this whole dampening down of your personality in a lot of ways. And I wondered, now that you've got all this freedom, what's important to you now?
For me, the most important thing is for me to be happy within myself. But the thing that makes me the most happy is like my kids and my husband. Like I'm so proud of them. And, for someone who didn't know how to bring up children, I look at them and I think, holy crap, I did that. So that makes me happy, but also, it's leaving a legacy and making the world a better place for all women. I mean, I've got 5 daughters, and to me, I don't want any of my daughters to go through what I went through. And then if I can make the world a better place for them, ultimately that ripples out to all women. So for me, that makes me happy to see the changes in the world to make the world a better place for women. And that honestly makes me happy when I can do that, on a full-time basis. That's what I want to do.
That's brilliant, because obviously Claire, I didn't mention at the beginning, and she didn't mention it, but she's done a number of TEDx talks. And so I'll put those in the show notes so that people can take a listen to those and find out more of your backstory that we haven't covered today. And so Claire, could you recommend an action for somebody who's listening, who feels stuck in the situation that they're in? What would support them right now?
Well, something that came to me a few months ago, which I was going to create another TEDx talk out of actually, was 2 questions: why and how. And if you think that you have no choices, just like literally sit there and ask yourself, why am I here, or why am I in this situation? And just think about your actions of how you got to this situation, and like you don't like it, like you made the choices, or probably we've made choices whether you knew them or not. You made these choices and you're in this situation. Then the question is, how can I change it? So then you need to actually take some time and sit and think and write down all the different ways that you could change this situation to make you happy. And then by doing that, that's like a step-by-step process, like if you're in debt, for instance, okay, so, how, like, why did I get into this situation? What were you doing to get into this situation? How can you change it? So that's what you need to do, and go step by step, and then set a goal into, the things that you're going to change. But do it in a, obviously, you can come out with a big long list of the things that you want to change, but don't get overwhelmed by that. Pick one, just pick one and stick with that and change that. So then you can move towards the goals more easily. If you're trying to work on 10 different things, it's not going to work. You're just going to be overwhelmed and you won't get anywhere. But just pick one thing that you can change. Whether it's buying a house, whether it's getting out of a relationship, or whether it's attracting another relationship, like think about it you know, how you got yourself into it, or why, you know, the reasons why you got yourself into this situation, why you allowed yourself to get into this situation, how are you going to get out of it?
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and you know, keeping it simple like that to 2 questions means that it's a time of reflection that you could sit and ask those questions, and I would say without judgment, but with curiosity, you know, because the judgment is not going to support you anyway. So that's great.
No.
So Claire, I wanted to ask you, what are your tips for living fabulously?
Oh, God. Well, you're going to laugh, but it's great coffee first thing in the morning in my Wonder Woman mug. Food. I cannot live without breakfast. My husband knows he's not my first love. It's coffee and breakfast first, then everything else falls into place. Honestly, it's the simple things. I have great sleep, coffee, breakfast, and exercise. They're my biggest things. Like, they're the things that I love the most. Like, okay. I mean, there's lots of things I love doing. You know, I play music, I do patchwork, those things I love too. Gardening, I love those. I don't have enough time to do all of those, but dead set, the sleep, the coffee, the food, and the exercise. And you've got it all going on.
Brilliant. And you can find Claire at her website, which is claireashman.com, and also on Facebook. And thank you, Claire, so much for sharing your wisdom. And I think I feel so inspired that even in spite of our situation, we can still have the power of choice. And that gives us the opportunity to keep moving forward. So whatever the situation is, it may feel something that's unbearable. And what I love is, I think in one of your interviews, you said that you asked too many questions and that's why you were evicted. So I'd encourage, let's keep asking questions and keep moving forward. So thank you for being with me today, Claire.
Thank you so much, Bev. I really appreciated it.